Coming up on Access Tech Live.
Accessibility at Intel, AI voice cloning, and Monday's Eclipse, how to watch it, hear it, and even feel it.
This is Access Tech Live with Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo. The latest in tech and accessibility every week. Follow us now and get involved at Access Tech Live.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week of Access Tech Live. I am Stephen Scott and I am joined this and every week by my good friend. This week I'm calling you Mark Snowman Aflalo. That's your new name.
I can't possibly think why, Stephen. Maybe because I went to bed and it was raining and I woke up to not being able to see my street, my stairs, my driveway covered in a wonderful eastern snowfall. You know, if this was Christmas, I would not complain about it, but I'm going to show some footage here of me opening my door for the first time this morning and looking outside and panning left and right going, okay, well, clearly no one's going to school this morning. And you know what I did right after, Stephen? Went right back to bed for an hour.
Quite right as well. Well, wonderful. Best of the season to you, and I hope it's a wonderful day. I was laughing earlier because you were telling me this, and I'm saying, it's all great, it's all fine. And then I immediately got a weather alert saying snow will be covering most of Scotland tomorrow. So I'm laughing on the other side of my face. Listen, we've got lots to get through this week on the show. Of course, I don't know if you'll be able to experience this, Mark, if the snow is still there, but next Monday we are experiencing a total solar eclipse to add to your snow. But what does that even mean? Well, we're going to bring in an expert, an actual expert on this program. Plus, Intel, we know both the company for their chips and processors, but what about accessibility? Well, we're going to find out more about that today with Daryl Adams. But first, let's get to Mark. He has this week's headlines.
Now, Access Tech Live headlines.
So Meta is reportedly bringing AI to its Ray-Ban smart glasses starting this month. The new feature will bring users object recognition, including animal and even monument identification. Plus, it's going to allow for real-time translations. There's no word yet on whether the feature will roll out outside of the US, but we are surely looking forward to using it and, of course, testing it hands-on, which we will, of course, bring to you guys later on this month. Google, a little bit of a PSA for you if you use Google to consume your podcasts. Google has officially shut down its podcast service, urging users to migrate to YouTube Music. The music service will be the new home for all things audio starting this week, if you haven't figured that out already. It's called voice generation, and it's a new AI model feature in ChatGPT. OpenAI is offering limited access to a text-to-voice generation platform called Voice Engine. The engine can create a synthetic and lifelike representation of someone's voice with only 15-second sample of their voice. Imagine that. The new AI-generated voice can read out text prompts, or commands, and actually do it in the same language or even translate it to other languages and make it sound like your voice. Now, disability advocate Colin Hughes says that despite the fears about this type of technology being used maliciously, he only sees the potential for disabled people like him.
I've always wanted to be a YouTuber, but I haven't got a strong enough voice to be one. But I can do things like edit and record video and so on, but I couldn't front a YouTube video. But with this kind of technology, I'm starting to think I could do a lot. I could do the voice presentation, I could do the filming, I could do the editing, but I could become a full-blown YouTuber. Who would have thought?
That is absolutely cool. 200 artists, though, are on the other side of the fence here, including the likes of Billie Eilish, Nicki Minaj, and the estate of Frank Sinatra. They're warning that AI could steal artists' voices and likeness if it's not protected. They're making a call to big tech firms, so the group of artists are pushing on them to not develop AI music generation tools because they feel that it can undermine or replace the human artistry of songwriters and artists or deny them fair competition for their work. The letter was penned by the Artists' Right Alliance, which worry that the AI or AI in general will infringe upon their rights and devalue their work. No word back from any of the big tech companies on the push. And finally, Stephen, I was going to put in a news item here about the eclipse, but there's so much going on, so many ways you can experience it, from audio, the video streams, even tactile ways, so much so that we're going to be talking about it a little bit later on in the show. So don't move if you want to know more about the eclipse, which is happening on Monday afternoon. Whew, that's a fun week, isn't it?
It is. It's going to be a great one. And it's something even I'm going to get interested in for the first time probably in my life. So we're going to talk about why that is a bit later. But, you know, it's kind of led us on to this fantastic question of the week here on Access Tech Live. It really ties into this with the solar eclipse and making us think about the natural world. What natural wonders have you experienced or would you like to experience in your lifetime? That is the question. Goodness me, that's a tough one. I'm guessing we've done pretty well with answers on this one already, Mark.
We've got some pretty good ones, and ones that I honestly didn't expect. You know, like you'd expect, you know, Aurora Borealis and Northern Lights, which is honestly it's on top of my list, and the fact that we can actually see that from some northern parts of Canada is pretty cool. But there's some really cool ones that come in. So, what natural wonders have you experienced or want to experience in your lifetime? If you want to connect with us on all our social media platforms at Access Tech Live, you can put it in the chat if you're watching on YouTube right now. You can even email us, feedback@accesstechlive.com, and get involved. Stephen, I promised it. Coming up, how can you watch the eclipse safely on Monday? And what's happening scientifically speaking? We bring in an expert who'll get us to those answers when we come back here on Access Tech Live.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Now, back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo.
And we're back on Access Tech Live now. Next Monday, we're going to be experiencing something that some say only happens every 350 years. That is a total solar eclipse. But what is actually happening during an eclipse? What actually goes on? And can we watch it? Can we actually look at it, Mark?
Well, those are all great questions, Stephen, and we need answers. So, Stephen,
Yes.
we caught up with Tracy Webb. She's an associate professor at the Department of Physics at McGill University and the Trottier Space Institute, and she helped us get to the bottom of some of these questions we have. Let's take a listen. Tracy, what is a total solar eclipse by definition?
It's very simple. It is when the moon, which orbits around the Earth, moves between us and the sun and blocks out the light from the sun. We can have a partial eclipse where it just moves a little bit in front of the sun, or a total eclipse, which is what we're having this time, where it blocks out all the light from the sun. So it's basically the moon casting a shadow on the Earth, and parts of the Earth are underneath that shadow.
Now, we've read that this, and I mentioned this at the top, but this only happens once every 350 years. But Mark and I have been talking about this, and we feel we remember the last one, and we haven't been around that long. So how is that possible, Tracy?
Well, so it is more frequent than that. It's sort of once a generation, but I do remember one from my childhood as well. So the next one in Montreal will be in early 2100s. Now, you may be also remembering a partial eclipse, which happens more often. But the total solar eclipses are sort of 100 years, is my understanding.
Okay, so from what I get to, and based on my research too, Tracy, is that, you know, it doesn't happen in the exact same place in the exact same way as often as we think. But I remember, and I actually looked at pictures, I remember Donald Trump as president walking out on the steps of the White House, looking up at the sky when we're all saying, no, don't do that, wear the glasses.
Yes, so let me just be clear there. The eclipse does happen multiple times a year. It's just whether you see it from your location is every 100 years or so.
Now, this one is pretty significant, and I think it's brought to our attention because, I don't know about you, I've got young school children, and they moved a pedagoggical day from early in March to April 8th because kids would be getting out of school when the eclipse would be happening. And because there is a risk of causing harm if you do look at an eclipse, it was a way to say, okay, let's put you parents in charge. We're not going to be in charge of this anymore. So how dangerous is it to look at an eclipse while it's happening?
Well, to look at an eclipse directly is very dangerous. It's like looking into the sun. When we look into the sun, there's an aversion reflex that happens. It doesn't feel good to look at that bright light, so we look away immediately. The problem with an eclipse is that the light from the sun is being dimmed, and so that reflex is less. Now, it has to be pretty covered for that to happen, but it is happening. And so it may be possible to look at the sun and not want to look away and hurt your eyes. Now, of course, we will all be watching the eclipse, all the astronomers at McGill, and we will be watching it through these glasses, which I'm sure you'll ask me about. And that allows us to watch safely.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about that because I didn't even realize that you could even look at it. I've heard of various things over the years where you use cardboard and you put a pinhole in and you look at the cardboard, not at the sun itself. But there are glasses you can use. So talk us through these glasses. What are they and what kind of quality are they?
Well, I think the quality can vary. So I would, first of all, suggest that everyone gets their glasses from a reputable source. Certainly here, there are lots of sources of glasses. The Trottier Institute that I'm part of is going to be giving them away on campus. But my understanding is that you want to look for a little sign or a little label on the glasses, which of course you can't see right now, which says meets the requirements for ISO, and then there's a number, which I can read if you want, certification. And so you're looking for this ISO certification.
So basically what you're saying is Amazon may not be the best choice to go pick up, 200 of these in bulk.
Well, I haven't done the search on Amazon, so I don't know what they're offering, but I certainly know the University of Montreal, McGill University, the Science Center, we all have very good glasses.
Now, what is it exactly in the glasses that is protecting us? Is it a UV thing? I guess the question is what is causing the damage other than the fact that we are looking at the sun, whereas instead of having the reflex of kind of, blinking our eyes and looking away, we don't have that reflex, yet the effects of, I guess, the UV, is that what's causing the harm?
Yeah, it's the UV light. And it's basically increasing the temperature in your eye.
Okay, so that makes sense. So when you explain it like, if you look at the sun now, your reflex is to look away because it's too bright. And obviously that's what causes the damage. And because it's covered, it doesn't mean that the UV is not getting to you. That's still the same amount. It's just that visually you're not getting that reflex, which would cause the harm. That being said, is there an amount of time that's good or bad to be looking at it, or we should just go the route of glasses?
Yeah, go the route of glasses for sure. So it is true that during the total eclipse, so the quick moment of totality, it is safe to look at the sun. But I have certainly been telling people it's best, that's hard to judge. I think on McGill campus, we're going to have an alarm go off when it's safe to take off your glasses and safe to put them back on again. But I think I will be leaving my glasses on all the time.
Yeah, I guess there can't be any harm if you leave the glasses on, right? Other than not looking at the right time. Is there anything, what do we learn scientifically, if anything, from eclipses? Is there something to be learned from that?
So there is. People who study the sun are interested in eclipses for the same reason that it's dangerous to look at the sun with your eyes. It's difficult to study the sun with a telescope because it's so bright. And so what people often, well, what they have to do is block out the light from the sun in order to study the rays coming from the sun. And so the eclipse does that in a natural way. Now, most scientists would use something like the Hubble Space Telescope to do this, which has what we call a coronagraph, which blocks out the light.
And what makes an eclipse so unique? What makes people so interested? Because I hear people having parties and picnics, and like Mark says, kids are out of school. So what is it? What is the attraction here?
Well, I feel like it's seeing science in action. We learn about the solar system in grade school. We hear about it, but it's very rare that you can actually see something that shows you that the solar system is really there and working the way we know it works. So we can predict these eclipses down to the second for many eclipses in the future. And so the fact that the scientists can tell us that if you look up into the sky at this certain time, you're going to see the moon move in front of the sun is just amazing to people and shows people that science really works.
Climate change is obviously on the lips of everybody these days. We're all looking at the world and how the world is being impacted by our climate and lots of reasons for that. Does your research here have any impact on that? Does it take part with any of that?
No, we're too far away. I mean, this is really a solar system space-based event, not anything to do with what's happening here on Earth.
Do you think, technologically speaking, is there any advancements, technologically speaking, we're a tech show, obviously, do we learn anything new every time there's an eclipse? Is there any kind of findings that we don't already know and have this beautiful opportunity to say, hey, look at that, we just proved this, but we can only do that every, decade or so?
Not to my knowledge, because the eclipse do happen every year, so people who need an eclipse can chase them. But also, most of the research now is done using telescopes that have that design a fake eclipse, basically.
I'm curious to see some of the pictures that we're going to get from some of these satellites and new objects that are already in space from the different angles and things that I know will be beamed down thanks to probably Elon Musk, probably, Stephen. Tracy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We're going to get our glasses at a reputable place. I'm not sure where that is now. Definitely not Amazon. We'll make sure it has the ISO certification and enjoy it with everybody else, please.
Great. Thank you. You too.
Now, Stephen, I actually did buy my glasses on Amazon. There are a couple places that, especially if they're Amazon certified, that they do have the ISO certification, which is pretty cool. And, the eclipse is going to be experienced in so many different ways. I heard a story in Texas. A bunch of students will be using a small device called a light sound box that translates changing light into sound so that blind and partially sighted individuals can experience it. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, I want to get my hands on one of these, but there's only 750 of them apparently that are going to be given out to different school kids around the country, which sounds amazing. So what it does is essentially it gives audio notes to almost visualize the light. So, or giving audio, I guess, to the light. So what you will get is very high flute notes, essentially, to indicate sunlight. And then as the sun starts to be covered by the moon, you will start to hear that sound get lower, and those notes get lower, almost to a clarinet level. And then when the time of totality, when the light is completely gone, you'll hear a low clicking sound, and then you'll start to hear the notes come back up again. A very clever device, very simple device, but really impactful for blind people to allow us to enjoy the solar eclipse as well. Also, worth mentioning that Perkins School for the Blind will actually be broadcasting this light sound live on Zoom. So wherever you are in the world, even if you can't get near one of these, you can still experience it. You can listen by phone as well, which is cool.
That's pretty cool. Look up the number and we'll try to get that up on social media. In Indiana, they've got a tablet with a row of dots that are going to help people feel the eclipse, thanks to research from Indiana's Tactical Engineering Department. And Stephen, my kids asked me if they can use their phones to record the eclipse. And the short answer is yes. But you got to do it safely with the proper solar filter. You know, some suggest actually putting your eclipse glasses or a second set, that you might have, because you need to, of course, have yours over the camera lens. Obviously, there are some tips to say disable your autofocus and play with the exposure settings. That way you get the perfect shot. And don't zoom in too much, because the more you zoom, the more it becomes digital, and that'll add too many artifacts and pixelation to it. And, it's even finally on AMI Audio, they're going to be broadcasting an audio described version of the eclipse thanks to a feed from ArtSpark TX Radio, which is pretty cool. And you heard something from Ira, right?
That's right. Yeah, we talked about it over on Double Tab, and it's very exciting. Ira, the visual interpreter service, are going to be running a live commentary again on Zoom, but also hopefully, if they can get it up and running, on their Ira Explorer app, which you can download on iOS and Android, and that will allow you to listen into that commentary wherever you are in the world. They're actually holding their event in Rochester in New York, and it's called Total Eclipse of the Park. Get it? Total Eclipse of the
I like
Park. See what they did there?
Oh, Lord. Listen, there's a state of emergency in Niagara Falls because they're expecting 1 million people to flock to the area, because that's right perfectly in line. But the state of emergency isn't because they're worried about people, looking at the sun. It's just the sheer amount of people that are going to be there. So the only way they can get the support they need to make sure they can police it all is by calling a state of emergency, which is kind of interesting. But, this seems like, to me at least, and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong or what your opinion might be, but it seems like the most attention we've given to an eclipse of this nature in my lifetime.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, and it's interesting from my point of view as well. As someone who's disabled, I often write this off a little bit because it's such a visual thing, and I think, what am I going to get out of this, really? And obviously, I think those of us who've got any remaining vision left are so terrified of losing it that the idea of looking anywhere near the sun is like, don't take what's left away. But at the same time, this time round, it's very interesting. We do seem to be talking more about it. And the opportunity for disabled people to get involved as well just makes it even better. So we can join the party. And it sounds like there's plenty of parties going around.
Yeah, I did catch up with someone at the Weather Network, and they're going to be broadcasting a video feed of it. So if you are scared and you want to shut the blinds and just hide in your basement, you can do that and turn on the Weather Network, and you can watch it yourself there. And he also mentioned something pretty cool, which was part of the scientific and the research element of this, while it's nothing new, is really the human behavior aspect. The people flocking to places and seeing and how it affects them. And also, you've suggested look at other things other than the sun while it's happening. Realize how dark it gets outside and see that kind of experience as well, and how the animals react. That's another element that people are going to be studying to make it even more interesting. So it's going to be definitely an experience, and we'll be there watching it on Monday. I'm sure you will be too.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also, from my memory of the last eclipse, it's the silence that tends to follow. Everyone falls silent when it goes dark, which is kind of wonderful and eerie. And then, especially in the middle of a day, right? When that happens, it's really weird. But just an incredible thing to be part of. And it's nice for some of us to actually come together. What a nice thing to come together in this wonderful world we live in.
Stephen, back at CES, we saw a very cool demo on stage, and we had to follow up and get some more information about it. And it all comes together with Intel and their director of accessibility. He's joining us next here on Access Tech Live, so do stick around. We'll talk all about that demo and what it means to our future.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Now, back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo.
Welcome back to Access Tech Live. I am Stephen Scott. Mark Aflalo is with me as always. And, you know, it wouldn't be a tech show if we didn't talk about AI at some point. But interesting where this particular topic comes from, because we're talking about the people who create the technology that I guess makes AI possible, right?
Yeah, totally. Back at CES, Stephen, there was a really cool AI demo on stage that was a demonstration of Intel's OmniBridge technology, which basically allows someone who's deaf to communicate with someone who isn't in real time. And no, the person who was not deaf could not read sign language, okay? The obvious question there. So we're going to play you a little clip of this demo from CES 2024. It's with Jim Johnson, the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Client Business Group at Intel.
And so a company with an Intel OmniBridge has been developing technology so the deaf can communicate with someone like me without the use of an interpreter. So I'm going to invite Adam Munder into the conversation. He's the co-founder and general manager, and his team has created technology to enable this. Let's show it in action.
So what's happening now is that he's on stage across from Adam, and he's actually signing this to
Hello,
him.
Adam. How are you?
Then after he just said that, Adam looks at his computer, which gives him the transcription of what was just said. Adam then reads it on the screen, and he signs back, "I am good. I am happy to be here today." And then the computer transcribes that sign language to text. He also added, "How are you doing today?"
I'm doing really well, thank you. Intel OmniBridge software is an example of how we're working together to make it easier for people like us to communicate day to day.
So then after just a couple of seconds after he says that, again, the text appears on screen. Adam reads it, and then he signs back to the computer, "I love how we use AI for technology good."
I couldn't agree more. Now we're having a conversation with Core Ultra Systems, your AI software, without an interpreter. I believe you are running this on this Core Ultra laptop, correct?
And he goes on to answer yes, which means that all that demo was actually physically on that device, Stephen, and no cloud involvement whatsoever. So you know, it's pretty cool. So when we saw that, we realized, okay, we have to learn more about this. We gotta figure out what's going on here. So we caught up with Intel's Director of Accessibility, Daryl Adams, and touched not only on that demo, but what accessibility means to a company like Intel.
Daryl Adams is the Director of Accessibility at Intel. Daryl, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Daryl, earlier this year, you guys demonstrated something pretty amazing at CES, and that was something called OmniBridge. It allowed two people, one just like me and one person who was deaf, to communicate in real time thanks to computer vision, basically deciphering adult sign language and turning it into the written word and vice versa. It blew my mind. Was that the reaction from others as well?
Well, I think it's the same for many people. I think that when you think about the idea of simulating sign language, it is such a compelling idea and it's such a difficult problem. So for many years, I think teams have been trying to solve this problem, to really address that barrier between the deaf community and the hearing community. And it turns out that at Intel, we have a deaf engineer who's a long-term engineer at the company. He's been around about 16 years doing silicon engineering. And he's, in order to do his job, he's completely dependent on sign language interpreters to interact with the rest of his peers. And so he finally came to the point where he realized, he's like, I think I can solve this. And so he put together a proposal, and that proposal ended up being fully funded and supported as an internal venture at Intel, which I thought was remarkable in its own right, that he'd be able to influence to the point where he was able to now get this entire project funded and resourced. And so for the last few years, they've been working diligently on it, and it's really come to the point where it's basically the world's largest high quality data set for sign language, and it's coming along. And as you saw with the demo, it's becoming quite compelling, and I think they're onto something, and really looking forward to seeing how this really turns up in the real world, and would love to really see it on the PC. And so that ultimately, that's my goal, is to see this at scale, able to help everyone.
Intel has been around the block a couple of times now, Daryl, innovating and working on technology that is years away. Now, that being said, and having worked at Intel for a while now, are you surprised anymore by the speed of which things like AI are being developed?
Yes and no. Like, it's hard to imagine when you see something for the first time that is just a step, such an advanced step forward. But in reality, at the pace at which we advance technology, compute in general, it's near exponential. And so it shouldn't be a surprise when we see significant leaps forward, but it is, because it's just amazing. You have an understanding of what you think your interaction with a computer looks like, or your interaction with a phone looks like, and then something so completely new and exciting comes along, and it's like, wow, I can't believe we're here. But I think this is really just the beginning. I think that, as we know, AI has been around for decades, and as we've been in the labs working very hard on things like natural language processing and computer vision and more of these traditional AI workloads, we've seen the potential to basically rethink how that relationship with technology, that not everything has to run through a keyboard and a mouse into a screen. And now that we have, over the past couple of years, as you're alluding, with generative AI, and this is showing us the power of what can be. And I think I look at this as just examples. We're just kind of creating a new language for ourselves, saying like, well, this is what computing can do. It's not science fiction. But ultimately, the way that this transforms how we behave with our technology, how we, like, an actual relationship with technology, is going to be fundamental. And I think this is going to continue to, this rapid rate of change is going to continue. So we need to get used to that, I think.
A lot of people are talking about using AI on device. Now, what that means is no cloud computing, everything is on the device, which makes it more secure. Are we at a point now where, technology speaking, we have enough power on device to do the things we want to do?
So I think, I'll say yes and no again. Like the Intel Core Ultra that was unveiled earlier this year, AI PC. So what we're talking about is a general purpose processor with a graphics processor, so CPU, GPU, and then the new kid on the block being the neural processor, so the NPU. And the reason why that's important is that when you design the silicon, the process to very specifically to manage and to optimize AI workloads, you gain efficiencies in power and performance at the cost that a consumer would expect to be able to do these things. But also keep in mind that we're going to continue to evolve these processors generation over generation for year over year, and it is near exponential. And so something that we see as state of the art today, in 3 or 4 years, it's going to be significantly more capable. Our CEO has a number of times, Pat Gelsinger, has noted that he has line of sight to a 1 trillion transistor chip. That's a lot of transistors, a lot of processing, and that's also not science fiction. That's something that is kind of that you can see happening in the decade.
Yeah, exactly. Darryl, talk to me about what accessibility means to you at Intel.
For me, it comes into play everywhere. So in my role as director of accessibility, it's kind of two hats. One is that traditional accessibility role where we want to be a company that is inclusive and accessible to all employees and is a great place to work for employees with disabilities. And so everything that means around the digital experience, the physical experience, the culture are all things that I'm interested in evolving and improving over time. And that's half of my job. The other part is about more along the lines of what we've been talking about today, where it's about what is Intel as a company, what is our role in the industry to produce and create a future of technology that is more inclusive and more accessible to more people. And the way that it plays out for me partially is that we are making a big bet on user experience. And as we have a corporate goal commitment to ensure that every one of our user experience professionals, so whether it's user experience research or design, will adopt fully inclusive design practices in their work by 2030. So what that means is that everything that we do that touches the user will involve direct insights from people with disabilities, from the general research to the product design to the testing throughout. We're doing that with employees and with people outside of the company to ensure that those insights are part of the process and understood. And ideally, from my perspective, is bringing more and more people into the mix, onto the teams as well that have disabilities. So that's a big key piece to it. But I think and the other thing that helps drive that sort of North Star around just making these platforms more accessible over time is that we're committed that year over year, each platform will be more accessible than the previous one. And so it's a little bit generic, but it gives us this notion that as we're designing the next generation, we have to be thinking about what is the thing that we need to think about this year that can make this better than it was. And this year's focus is all around improved hearing aid compatibility and hearing experience for people that have hearing loss across the board. And we'll continue just to push down that path, as well as implementing new capabilities for vision loss and motor mobility challenges as well.
Are you finding that your partners are embracing what you're putting on the table and developing and taking and running with it?
Yes, I think we're seeing definitely an uptick across the board with the industry relationships. And I think that is also probably another key point here, is that all of this that we're talking about it's never one company. It's imperative that we have strong relationships across the industry, whether it's Intel with Microsoft or Google or any of the PC computer manufacturers. We need to work together so we can develop not only more accessible and usable solutions, but things that are consistent and standardized. So it's not like you go and buy one computer that does the thing that you need, and then the next computer doesn't. We need to think of these capabilities as sort of table stakes, things that just must happen and happen in a consistent fashion.
Darryl Adams, the Director of Accessibility at Intel. Thank you for joining us.
It's been a pleasure, Mark. Appreciate you having me on.
When we come back here on Access Tech Live, Stephen's been hunkering down and putting together what he thinks are the top 5 AI accessibility tips. What does that even mean? We'll find out after a quick break. Stick around.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Now, back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Access Tech Live. Now, Mark, I've been doing my homework, you know. I decided to find out about some of the top accessibility and AI combinations, shall we say. Because look, we talk about AI all the time, and we say, oh, how wonderful AI is. But how is it wonderful? What is so wonderful about it? So should I just dive right in? Should we just dive right in?
No, Stephen.
Oh.
This, I know how much work you put into this, and we had our production team working feverishly for the past 10 minutes and put together some fun production for this. So let's roll that intro, shall we?
Stephen's Top 5 AI Accessibility Tips.
Now, doesn't that seem fitting? Now you feel prepared, don't you? You feel honored for the work that you put in for all this, right?
No expense spent.
None whatsoever. So here's how it's going to work, Stephen. You've got top 5 tips.
Yes.
Is there a preferential treatment here? Like, is this a countdown, or is it more just like the top 5 that you think are good?
No, I can't honestly order these into any possible order. They're all wonderful.
Okay.
They're all winners as far as I'm concerned.
So let us begin with number 5.
Number 5.
Oh, okay.
This is
We're
where
going to do
this
this
is where
every
you
time.
go.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Okay.
Every single time.
So, Voice It is the first app that I want to talk to you about. Now, this is an incredible app. Again, and they're all AI. It's very important to understand this. Everything I'm going to tell you about features a way of using AI to benefit disabled people. And this one converts unusual speech patterns into comprehensible speech. It is quite remarkable. I'm watching a few videos on this. It is designed for people, of course, who've got speech problems to make that communication easier. It can do real-time translation of unintelligible speech. It can be entirely customized as well for, individual speech nuances that people have, even dialects. And it will work with popular communication devices as well, which is wonderful. The key here, of course, is to allow people to communicate better, and even those who've got difficulties talking. And it can even adapt to different languages, accents, which is wonderful. However, like a lot of these apps, you would imagine there needs to be some training, some initial training to make it work well. It might face challenges with extremely rare speech disorders, but ultimately, this is what I would call a good egg when it comes to an app like this. It is quite incredible. You've got to go check it out at the website, which I'll give you in a minute. But I just want to tell you, if you did decide to go down the route with this, you'd be spending around $9.99 a month, which seems kind of average, I think, Mark, for an app like this. Fairly average.
Yeah, let's go with that. It's kind of average. I'm with it.
Yeah, it is. Voiceit.com, and that's voiceit.com. That is the website you go to. So Voiceit with an extra T at the end. Voiceit.com. Go check out the videos as well on YouTube. Quite incredible.
I will go check that out right now. Let's move on to our next number.
Number 4.
Well, I could get used to this. Ava is another AI-powered communication app, this time designed for people who have hearing impairments. So this one provides real-time transcriptions of conversations between people, such as, making group conversations easier. Now, you might say, well, look, there's loads of apps out there that do this. Why would I want to pay for one? But these are built with people who are disabled in mind, and often built by people who are disabled as well, which is wonderful. So what's the features? Speech to text in real time, speaker identification as well. You can train it to know who's talking. That's important. And of course, it supports multiple languages. Now, there are many pros to these apps. User-friendly, built for the community, but there can be cons as well. First off, this one does require a stable internet connection, so that can be difficult if you're out and about. You might also face some challenges in noisy environments. This, again, is a common problem, and until our microphones within our devices are better, this is something we're going to face with a lot of these types of apps. This is costing around $14.99 a month. Again, typical kind of pricing, invaluable if this changes your life. Ava.me, M-E, that is, Ava, A-V-A.me is the website. I'll give you that one more time, ava.me, ava.me. A fantastic app, and again, something that can really make people's lives better, Mark. That is what we're trying to showcase here, how wonderful AI can be to improve people's lives.
Yeah, I'm noticing a trend with AI. It tends to kind of hover around transcription or replacing voices. It's kind of interesting. I'm looking forward to the next number.
Ooh.
Number 3.
It's 3, of course it is. Waymap is, I'm really enjoying this. Waymap is a tool designed for people like me, visually impaired people. And the idea here is to make navigation easier. Now, we've had a lot about navigation apps in the past. This one's slightly different because it can work outdoors and indoors as well, providing the areas indoors have been mapped. There's a video online that showcases this app being used in a train station, and the person walks into the train station. The app is able to tell them when their train will be, what platform the train will leave from, and then guide them to that platform. That's pretty impressive. You can also get detailed audio instructions for a safe journey. You can get voice guide. You can get point of interest identification. Again, these are things you might find typically in other apps, but that ability to connect the dots, to be able to find your train, get to it, is quite incredible. There's a little bit of a con with this, unfortunately. Availability is limited to some locations. It's not everywhere. So even in my country, it's not available everywhere. It's not available everywhere in Canada yet. Initial map setup might require some assistance because you will have to go and download some of this information ahead of time. But again, if you're fairly proficient using the phone, you'll probably manage. The good news is this one's free. Well, the basic version is. There are premium versions, of course, available through in-app purchases as well. We're going to be talking more about this soon on the show, but waymapnav.com is the place to go. That is waymapnav, N-A-V, as in navigate.com. Well worth checking out. These are cool, right? You're liking these?
No, I love these. Indoor navigation seems to be like this almost unicorn of things, or this, hard to figure out process because, there's no GPS, right? So navigating indoors, at one point they were going to put beacons in malls and stuff like that, but it hasn't really happened. So it's nice to see an app that actually tries to bridge that gap, which leads us perfectly, Stephen, into number
2.
And this one has the hardest name I've ever had to say of an app. It's called Proloquo2Go. And I nearly got it right. Proloquo2Go. I will spell out for you in just a minute. But this is for people who've got autism or for people who are non-speaking. So this is using this what's called AAC feature. It's AAC, if you have never heard of this before, and I hadn't up until researching this. It's augmentative and alternative communication. And that is what many people who are classed as non-speaking often have. So this allows people who are non-speaking, children, adults especially, to express themselves confidently and initiate conversations. So think of this like a touchscreen device where you've got a range of different symbols, different words on there. You can press those and it will be able to deliver that message for you. So set of tools, systems and strategies, more than just icons on a screen, really to help people who have difficulty with speech. Now, of course, if you think about it, if you actually really dig into this, we all use AAC at some point in our lives. Think about texting on your mobile, right? That's an example of that, where you're not using your words. Using gestures, for example, facial expressions. We do it all the time. Now, this app is very flexible, and it can be personalized to cater to individuals, which is really important, and a range of different disabilities. So it's got symbol-based communication, it's got a customizable vocabulary, which I could do with right now, and visual support for language development. Now, it does require you to have a little bit of expressive communication to start, which can be challenging. And also, it can be suitable for a lot of different people who've got various language disorders, which is wonderful. Pricing on this, one-time purchase, it's quite expensive, this one, Mark, $249.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. But the app you're looking for is Proloquo to go, and the website to go to is assistiveware.com, and you can search for it there. It's Proloquo2go. We will, I promise, put that somewhere so you can find it.
Yeah, we will definitely. And it is Autism Awareness Month, so we're going to maybe talk about that a little bit more on a show down the month. Let's go with number one.
It's number one. And this one, I'll be quite short with this one. I think you're going to love this, and I bet you're going to use this one, Mark. It's called Goblin Tools, a collection of simple single task tools, mostly designed to help people who are neurodivergent with tasks that they find overwhelming or difficult. I've got to tell you some of the features here. A magic to-do list creator. You just type in what you want to do in a list, not even in a list, in a paragraph. It will go off and it will create that to-do list for you. You and I could do with one of these. A formalizer for creating the right tone in a message you want to send. You know, you want to send a message to someone, you want to make sure it's professional, maybe it's a little bit cheeky, maybe a bit spicy, then, well, hey, you can use it for that. Or use the judge, another feature of this, to detect tone in the messages you've received. Sometimes you might wonder, you know, was the tone of it, what was there any tone in a message? It's hard to detect from a text message, right? So this is something you can do. So quite incredible. Loads of other stuff on there. Go check it all out. And you can find it at goblin.tools, the easiest email address I think we've given you today.
There you have it, Stephen's top 5 AI accessibility tips. And after a quick break, we're going to come back and get to the answers to our question of the day. What natural wonders have you experienced or want to experience in your lifetime? We'll get to those in a minute.
There's more Access Tech Live to come. Get involved and have your say at Access Tech Live on social media. We'll be right back. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. Access Tech Live will return in less than 2 minutes. Access Tech Live is in a commercial break. The show will return in less than a minute. Access Tech Live will be back in 30 seconds. Now, back to Access Tech Live, the latest in tech and accessibility with Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo.
We're wrapping up here on Access Tech Live, but not before we get to our question of the day, of course, and following the news that the solar eclipse is coming up on Monday. We thought we'd ask you this. What natural wonders have you experienced or want to experience in your lifetime? Mark, what kind of answers have we been getting?
I'm curious what your answer is, but we'll get to that soon. Kenny wrote us, Mount Everest and the Grand Canyon are on the top of my list. Mount Everest, okay, I'm good with that. Grand Canyon, I really wanted to see. I tried to see that in Phoenix, but they don't tell you how far it is away from that, which is pretty interesting. Lloyd, this is a really interesting one, Stephen. I never tire of rainbows. It's the simple things.
Oh, that's nice.
I feel like I should have put music behind that.
That's nice. I like that one.
Stuart writes us, I've only flown over the canyon, I guess the Grand Canyon, and into the Aurora Borealis. Got to ask him about that one, but would love to experience them both firsthand. I mean, again, I'm so with him on the Aurora Borealis. I would, if I was able to fly into it, that would be pretty cool. I don't know what that means, but we'll try to figure that one out. And guess what? Wendy writes, the Northern Lights. I sense a theme here. Mm-hmm. You? I mean, I'd like to see the Great Wall of China. I think that's a wonder of the world that I'd like to see. Maybe the pyramids in Egypt.
I think for me, it's the very first ever KFC. I think if I could find that first store where they opened up where the Colonel began his journey, I think that would be
really a natural
place.
Wonder of the world.
It is for me. Oh yes. Oh yes. Yes, please.
Okay, KFC. If anybody knows where the first ever, I'm pretty sure that's probably not a hard answer to find, but the first ever KFC in the world, let Stephen know so he can get there immediately. It's a total priority. Eclipse Monday. I believe the actual time of the eclipse is like 3:20 something. Not 100% sure. We'll look that up. Make sure you get your glasses if you haven't already. They have to be ISO approved and CE certified. I've got 5 pairs in my house, so. We've got 4 people and the dog. We're all set, Stephen. We're going to enjoy that for sure. I want to thank Tracy Webb, obviously, from McGill for joining us and filling us in on everything that is going on there. Really, really cool. And, of course, Daryl Adams, Director of Accessibility over at Intel. I mean, this is taking AI to new heights, and I love it when we find new ways to actually experience it, which is pretty neat. So, and thank you for your top 5. That was something I think that's going to go in the history books. We're going to have to do that a little bit more often. Okay, so get your pen ready.
Love it.
On behalf of everybody that was on this week's show, thank you for being here with us and on every single week here at Access Tech Live. Follow us online, and we'll catch you next week right here, same time, same place.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Access Tech Live. Follow us online on all social media at Access Tech Live. Email us feedback@accesstechlive.com. Hosted by Stephen Scott in Glasgow and Mark Aflalo in Montreal. Written by Stephen Scott and Mark Aflalo. Producer, Mark Aflalo. Live show director, Anastasia Spalding-Stenhouse. Technical director, Caitlin Robinson. Audio, Jordan Mulgrave. Live graphics and playback, Kingsley Juco. Graphics coordinator, Eliza Rocco. Integrated Described Video Specialist, M. Williams. Supervising producer, Michelle Dudas. Produced in collaboration with Aflalo Communications, Inc. and Double Tap Productions. Copyright 2024, Accessible Media, Inc.
An AMI original production.